In a remarkable metamorphosis, Wolfgang Van Halen went from being a nepo baby mock to being one of the most revered bandleaders of all time. Without relying on his father's prominent position in the music industry, Wolfgang Van Halen established his own history after becoming a music prodigy and teaching himself guitar. If you're interested in learning about the work that went into Wolfgang Van Halen's success and the secret to his metamorphosis, then you've come to the right place. At his debut, he was unfairly criticized by several purported fans of Wolfgang Van Halen's music for being a nepo baby. His debut solo album Song garnered a Grammy nomination, though, and it altered everything. Early on, Wolfgang showed musical skill, which is not surprising given that his dad was a legendary rock guitarist. However, it may come as a surprise to some that playing the drums was actually his first passion. Adorably posing behind his uncle Alex Van Halen's drum kit, he posted a childhood photo to Instagram. According to his post, he was wearing his drumming Uggs and using drumsticks that were nearly as big as him to sneak in a little jam session. Wolfgang informed the media in a recent interview that his dad had him beat a stack of magazines on a table like a snare drum when he was about 8 years old. The most important thing about playing the drums, according to his dad, was being able to keep the beat. Wolfgang was unaware that this initial step in his musical career would lead to the development of a loyal fan following. After some time, Wolfgang took his music seriously and graduated from utilizing magazines to a genuine drum kit. At the age of 9 or 10, he started playing the drums, he said. It was the one skill that his father invested the effort to instill in him. When his dad discovered he had a skill, he was overjoyed. Because of how they raised him, Eddie Van Halen and Valerie Bertinelli kept Wolfgang away from the limelight when he was a kid. He told media that his mom was fantastic at making sure he had a normal, unremarkable childhood. In an interview with Guitar World, Wolfgang reminisced about a family vacation when they were greeted by an overwhelming number of photographers at the airport upon their return. That was the first time he realized that people were acting differently around his parents. The only peculiar thing that came to mind was the abundance of paparazzi lights that he had seen. Ultimate Classic Rock was informed by Wolfgang that he learnt the truth about his family's musical heritage when he was about 6 or 7 years old. Eddie Van Halen was remastering Wolfgang's band's early albums when this happened. Additionally, he had a distinct recollection of discovering a box containing all the albums, where he saw his own name and a photo of his father. Wolfgang had one of his first unforgettable glimpses into the music industry when, intrigued, he asked his dad what it was. His dad casually answered that it was part of his job. His father had a passion for playing the guitar, and as Wolfgang grew older and his memory improved, he began to show an interest in picking up the instrument. Like you, he was startled that his father hadn't really taught him how to play. In an interview with Louder Sound, Wolfgang said that his dad wasn't the best educator. So long as Wolfgang asked Eddie to demonstrate a certain technique, the great guitarist would just pretend to be himself and instruct Wolfgang to imitate his every move. This would make Wolfgang laugh, and he'd make a sardonic comment in response, understanding how difficult it was to emulate his dad's playing style. In a playful way, he voiced his displeasure, believing that their abilities could never measure up to Eddie's. In your opinion, did he really intend it? Putting everything aside, Wolfgang was able to teach himself guitar on his own. He said that he aspired to emulate his father's self-taught guitar approach as both of them were independent learners. He stressed to spin the significance of developing his own sound and abilities. In his opinion, this strategy was useful. Otherwise, they'd just be playing a subpar rendition of Van Halen's music. After Wolfgang made great strides on guitar in 2006, his father extended an invitation for him to replace Michael Anthony on bass for Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen maintained that his son Wolfgang's promotion to full band member at the tender age of 15 was based solely on his talent, even though this decision may have appeared biased to outsiders. In response to his dad's invitation, Wolfgang gladly joined, but he insisted on not performing bass solos. Critics were skeptical of Wolfgang's abilities at first, but he proved them wrong in 2007 and 2008 on the band's reunion tour with David Lee Roth. But there were some Van Halen faithful who thought he was a deserving newcomer. It was a tough scenario, and Wolfgang told Louder Sound that it affected him greatly. Things improved much further afterwards. Wolfgang had been a longtime member of Van Halen and a mainstay on stage by 2013. He also announced that year that he was going to be a part of another hard rock band called Tremonti. He told Billboard that he was devoting the same amount of effort to Tremonti as he had to Van Halen. He did say that, although Van Halen was his first priority, he always gave Tremonti his whole attention when Van Halen wasn't performing. Wolfgang told Rock Street Journal that his friendship with Creed guitarist Mark Tremonti for a long time was the obvious starting point for his relationship with Tremonti. He recalled being in Tremonti's home state of New Jersey when they were in dire need of a bass player for an impending tour. They were going on tour together the following day, and he recalled going over to their apartment late at night to study the full set. The news that Eddie Van Halen was undergoing tongue cancer therapy broke in 2001. Sometime later, in 2002, he made the announcement that he had triumphed over his disease and was officially certified cancer-free. He was 65 years old when he died in 2020 from complications caused by a recurrence of cancer. Because of the strong bond he shared with his father, Eddie's passing hit Wolfgang very deeply. He confided in Carson Daly about how tough it was, adding that while some days were easier than others and that the pain seemed like it would never completely subside, he was finding ways to manage it. In response to a question about his well-being, Wolfgang stated that he was depressed but was making an effort to be optimistic. For Wolfgang and the music industry as a whole, Eddie Van Halen's death was a devastating blow. In addition to being a famous musician, he was a doting father and best friend to him, he said. A new TV special was putting pressure on Wolfgang and his mum Valerie Bertinelli, who had already lost their dad Eddie Van Halen a few years before. Eddie, renowned guitarist for Van Halen, was supposed to have his life and death chronicled in this program. Part of a larger series, Autopsy, The Last Hours of Unreal seeks to explain the circumstances surrounding the demise of famous people. According to Real's website, the show intends to depict the final moments of these giants by utilizing crucial medical data from their autopsies. During the Eddie Van Halen episode, forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Hunter was supposed to offer some insights. In his quest to discover the cause of Eddie's untimely death, he would investigate every aspect of his life. In order to better comprehend the events leading up to Eddie's death, Dr. Hunter would conduct a thorough analysis of his life, as stated in the episode description. On Twitter, Van Halen voiced his extreme disapproval of Reels, not hesitating to voice his disapproval. He slammed the show for its vile attempt to capitalize on the glamour of a cancer patient's dying and characterized it as pitiful and cruel. It was obvious that the way the situation was being handled was upsetting to him. As if to bolster her son's sentiments, Bertinelli tweeted that she shared his displeasure at the entire situation. Both the episode and the series were defended by Reels. According to them, Autopsy, The Last Hours of investigates the deaths of famous people in a responsible manner, shedding light on the circumstances behind their untimely demise. A lot of people watch the show, and the network said that many of those people are either medical experts who like how accurate it is or fans who feel like it gives them closure or who learn something new about health. It could potentially go unnoticed if left unattended. That's not everything. Despite their 2007 divorce, Bertinelli portrayed Eddie as a soulmate in her book Enough Already, Learning to Love the Way I Am Today. She told the press that she thinks people cross paths with specific spirits in order to overcome obstacles in life. Bertinelli said that having a son, Wolfgang Van Halen, was an important part of their journey. Not only had she never felt love like that before, but she also said that other people had a hard time understanding her sentiments since they are so private. Looking back on their relationship, Bertinelli reflected that there were far more good times than bad, despite the challenges they endured. She made it clear that her feelings for Eddie were unlike any other love she had ever felt. Bertinelli said that her relationship with Ed was unique, one she had never experienced with anybody else before. In contrast, Wolfgang told the media that his father's words of encouragement to overcome his grief and live life to the fullest have stayed with him long after his death. He spoke about how his father is an inspiration to him, saying that his father would be furious with him if he gave up and retreated into himself, something he considers doing frequently. Additionally, Wolfgang mentioned that his dad is the driving force for his perseverance. When Wolfgang wasn't on the road with Van Halen or Tremonti, he was busy in the studio writing songs for his 2021 debut album, Mammoth WVH. After years of practice, Wolfgang finally pulled off the impossible. He played every instrument on the album and painstakingly recorded each part. He informed the press that he was completely responsible for all aspects of the production, from writing to playing, which was both a huge burden and an exciting opportunity for creative expression. Wolfgang didn't have a clear vision for the album's final form before recording began. The debut Foo Fighters album, on which Dave Grohl played every instrument, served as an inspiration, but he doubted he could replicate Grohl's success. After the album came out a year ago, Wolfgang took to social media to express how much of an impact it made on him. He said it was the culmination of a long period of toil, during which he had experienced numerous emotions, including loss, fear, self-doubt, and blunders. According to him, it was the start of a new chapter in his life, and although he wasn't sure he was ready for it, he chose to welcome it nevertheless. The publication of his debut album solidified his resolve to take his music on the road for live performances. Mammoth WVH. His dad was in a band before he founded Van Halen, therefore that's where the name Mammoth came from. According to Wolfgang's interview with NPR, he had a soft spot for that name ever since his dad told the tale. As soon as he was old enough, he vowed to himself that he would have an album and band named after it. His musical journey continued beyond that, just as he had planned. As the frontman for his own rock band, Wolfgang ventured into uncharted musical territory. In an interview for Walking the Floor with Chris Shiflett, he explained that he had no intention of sounding like David Lee Roth or any of his other collaborators. He said that, to a certain degree, he was simply being himself. Being genuine was more essential to him than worrying that it would be boring. Wolfgang's first Grammy nomination came from his debut album, and his hit Distance was named Best Rock Song. Wolfgang shared an Instagram photo of himself, his mom Valerie Bertinelli, and his ex-girlfriend Andrea Alsop to commemorate the accomplishment. He made it clear in his post that it was acceptable that they had attended the nomination ceremony but had not been successful. Being nominated for his first solo single, particularly in the same category as musicians he had always looked up to, was an incredible honor for him. The nomination's seriousness had not yet completely hit him, he confessed. He said that he believed he was merely continuing in his father Eddie Van Halen's footsteps since he didn't win a Grammy when he was first nominated. His mother expressed her immense pride in her son and was overjoyed by the news. Having been acknowledged as an equal in a songwriting area was a major accomplishment for Wolfgang, who revealed more of his feelings in an interview with Noise11.com. Being nominated for a Grammy with bands he has always admired, like the Beatles, Weezer, and Foo Fighters, was a win for him. In the same interview, he reflected on the event and stressed its significance to him. He made it clear that he saw the nomination as an endorsement of his work and abilities rather than merely a kind of acknowledgement. Being in the same league as those iconic bands, Wolfgang said, made the occasion that much more memorable. On October 15, 2015, Wolfgang and Alsop, a photographer, went on their first date after connecting online. 8 years later, on the same date, the happy couple tied the knot in their Los Angeles home. People magazine said that about 90 people showed up to the party. Alsop said that getting together with loved ones was their top priority. In addition to celebrating their marriage, they hoped that the wedding would be a happy event for everyone who was important to them. As they walked down the aisle, Wolfgang requested that Van Halen's instrumental song 316 Inches play in memory of his father. For the guitarist, writing this song for his son made it all the more meaningful. Not only was the wedding a once-in-a-lifetime event for the happy couple, but it was also a meaningful occasion that allowed their loved ones to celebrate with them. Yes, there is more. The news that her son had met a life partner filled Bertinelli with joy. She told the press that they really get each other. They have a similar sense of humor. They have common interests and are good at respecting each other's space. Their chemistry made her feel at ease, which brought her joy for their sake. When Wolfgang Van Halen received the opportunity to play on the soundtrack for the major movie, Barbie, last year, he was still receiving a lot of attention from his own album, a successful concert tour, and even a Grammy nomination. He worked his guitar magic on Ryan Gosling's hit single I'm Just Ken, which featured Slash of Guns N' Roses. Being a part of Gosling's Oscars performance was an incredible experience, he told The Morning Call. Still filled with excitement despite feeling a little out of place. Upon reflection, he realized that the Barbie movie would strike a chord with audiences, but he could never have predicted its enormous success. His participation in the project, even while little, was something he really loved, and he remarked on how great it was. Wolfgang released Mammoth 2, his second album, in August of last year. He played every instrument on the album, just like Barbie. Some people have accused Wolfgang of being a nepo baby, and they aren't even fans. During an interview on the Atlanta radio show The Morning X, David Roth Lee voiced his disdain of Wolfgang. The station's hosts had previously expressed their confusion over Roth's comments in a January 2018 YouTube video. They aired their grievances, claiming they failed to grasp his meaning. When they seemed confused, Roth used the chance to explain where he stood on the issue. He sought clarification by explaining that he felt his remarks had been misconstrued. The hosts listened intently as he continued to explain his position in an effort to clarify his original message and their own comprehension of it. I hear you asking, what was that video about? Well, Roth poked fun at Van Halen and raised questions about bias in the music business. A man posing as Wolfgang Van Halen expressed his desire for the world to know that his success in the role was directly attributable to his abilities in the video. Even if his father hadn't been a well-known rock musician, he said, he would still be employed here. His success was due solely to his natural abilities, and he wanted everyone to know it. The imposter continued by saying that he wanted people to appreciate his talent and not assume he was lucky because of his father. This made Wolfgang angry. He was determined to show that he was deserving of the part based on his own abilities. Van Halen expressed his gratitude for the thoughtfulness shown towards him. Aside from claiming credit for penning the hit song Eruption, which has Eddie Van Halen's signature guitar solo, he cautioned that, although it's flattering to be recognized, people should exercise caution when taking anything at face value. It looks like Wolfgang has become the next target in the continuing drama surrounding Van Halen, which he thinks he was born into. His father is no longer there to be the center of attention. This whole thing was making him nervous. There is absolutely no way that Wolfgang's father could ever be a part of a reunion, he said emphatically. He has made his feelings about performing the song without his dad very apparent. Roth revealed his retirement in a 2021 piece for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, where he discussed his career. Like Jennifer Aniston and Ben Stiller, Wolfgang Van Halen is a nepo baby who turned that label into a successful career in show business. Wolfgang Van Halen is pleased with his life's work and the history he has built for himself, even if he was delighted that people were starting to recognize his own talent and stop comparing him to his father, Eddie Van Halen.